Good morning, listeners. My name is Christian.
And my name is Micha.
My name is Josiah.
Welcome to the Morning Ponderings podcast.
Seeking truth is just as much a matter of uncovering possibilities as it is a matter of finding answers. And while there are a lot of podcasts out there that are talking about the answers or seeking the answers, we're here to fill that little niche where we just uncover those possibilities and maybe zero in on some possible answers, or whichever ones we favor the most. So welcome to our Morning Ponderings.
Indeed. Now I don't know how I'm going to slice this one up because, certain things aren't going to make sense if I put things at whatever. It'll be all right.
So many possibilities.
Yeah, I'll figure it
just
out.
Put a cool piano intro here. I'll just say this for all the listeners. We talked already for 8 minutes, so Micah might just put a cool piano intro in between us talking. Whoa, why am I not recording? Am I recording? Hold on,
man.
Audacity is being weird.
Yeah.
And Josiah is coming to us here from the tin can.
Yeah. Basically, the tin can known as an... Oh, no, you don't have an iPhone.
Nope. I'm using Prt2 T5 True wireless earbuds.
Hey, Clips
There you
are...
go.
that's a good brand, so...
Yeah, you would think so. Do you want to hear how I got these Tier 2 earphones? Do you want to hear how I got these scars?
Sure.
Please.
Geez, Audacity is really not responding right now. Audacity is already running. I'm aware. Thank you. So I owned the $75 earbuds for a while. And then one day the left earphone just stopped working.
Mm.
Oh, everything's fine apparently. 1 second.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Welcome back
so
to the tin
this
can,
is...
maybe? Or maybe you never left? Who
Welcome
knows?
back to my audio. It apparently was recording the whole time. It just wasn't showing me that it was recording.
Oh, strange.
Anyway, so I did stop it for that whole Clips rant, so that might have to be sliced weirdly. Anyway, this is just...
Don't worry about it.
Hi, I'm rambling. So basically I owned the $75 versions for a while because I was tired of earphones that just kept breaking because they were $20, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to spend more money on earphones if I buy the cheap ones. So I did research and I was like, okay, these are good earphones and they're within my price range, so I bought them. And they just one of the earphones stopped working after a while. And so I emailed them and they were like, "Oh, we're sorry about that. That sounds like it sucks." And I was like, "Yeah, it kind of does." And they basically told me that the seller on Amazon that I bought from was not an authorized seller, so the warranty didn't apply. And then they were like, "But you've been pretty nice, so we're just gonna send you another earbud." And I was like, "Oh, perfect, thank you."
It pays to make a customer service person's day.
As a customer service person, yes. An online customer service person who will go very hard on the rules if you make me mad. Yes.
Literally anytime I call customer service, it's my absolute mission to be the best customer they've had all day. So that's done some great things for me before.
Yeah.
But it's also, good for a customer service person because they have to put up with so much garbage all day long.
So they sent me that, and it what?
I was about to say, as somebody who works in retail, you wanna treat the people who are handling your things right.
Yeah. This person who I was emailing, I do their exact job. That's my job just for break parts, is to email people. Well, I also make a bunch of product images because I don't get very many emails. But, that's my job. But, yes, they sent me one, and the new one didn't work with the old one because they weren't part of the same set. So it was, either or connected, and I told them. And it also, wasn't charging for some reason. It wouldn't keep a charge. So I told them, and they were like, okay, send back everything, all of the earphones, and we will do an exchange. We'll just we just need the return. And they gave me a return label, and I was like, okay, cool. So I sent it back, and then they sent me a new one of the same exact type, except this one was not charging at all. Like the earphones would last for about 15 minutes.
Wow.
And then they would just quit. They were
Yikes.
quitters. And so I emailed them and I was like, hey, I really hate to bother you, but this, the thing that you sent me under the warranty is like broken. Can I please send this back? And they were like,
Yeah.
okay, yes, and we're going to upgrade you so that this doesn't happen again. So I got their earphones
Ayo.
that cost $145 at minimum.
There you go.
For the price of the $75 ones about a year ago.
That were
Dude,
from an
nice.
unauthorized Amazon seller.
Yeah, and these are
fantastic.
yeah, but the unauthorized Amazon seller, at least they sent me earphones that worked for 6 months.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I mean, it's not like
True.
they did that intentionally. It was just they had stock
No.
from Klipsch.
Yeah.
Technically, the company that I sell from is like an unauthorized seller of the products of the warehouse that I also work at. We have like a sub company. I'm not going to say any of the names for any of these companies because I'm not supposed to say this. But
So-
like the online selling
Anyway.
company is like a different company, but like it's just run from the warehouse, but they take sole
Gotcha.
like that company takes all of the responsibility of the products that get sold. So basically that like there's no warranties because the warranties are all from like a wholesaler, which doesn't apply to retail sales. So it's a whole like legal mess
Interesting.
thing.
So
whatever.
I don't mean to like butt in too much, but we're about halfway through.
Oh, I should stop.
Do we want to
talking.
give it's all right. Now, do we want to give like quick 1-minute TikTok versions of how our weeks have been and then jump into the topic?
Yeah.
If you want to know what my week's been, basically me, my son, my wife all came down with the stomach flu and have been throwing up for a long time. We're starting to get better. Haven't thrown up for over 24 hours myself, my wife also, but my
Oh.
son, he's still sensitive stomach. So it's just been a wonderful, terrible week of just yuck.
Dude.
Yeah.
You've had it rough.
It's not been
Like,
great.
you've gotten COVID twice now, and then the stomach flu not long after the
You
last
see,
time.
I'll probably have a new sickness story every 2 weeks because my son's in preschool and preschools
Ah.
are like they are
It's a little petri dish.
what's like little petri discs. They're infamous. They're infamous for just constantly getting families sick. It's an amazing preschool. My wife works at this preschool. We love it, and it's
Yeah.
worth every penny. But this is one of the costs.
Yeah. Dang.
How's your week been, Micah?
They've been good. I've started talking on my TikTok quite a bit about asexuality. And those videos have just, I don't want to say gone viral because viral is like probably not the correct word, but more views than I've ever seen my videos get.
Oh.
And a lot of traction and a lot of hate from people who are stupid. And so I've been having to deal with that.
They
for the
haven't
last-
considered enough possibilities.
Yeah, that is true. And they really think they know me better than I know myself, which is really weird, but whatever. And I also then have gotten back into working on music, and I am making a lot of progress because I am hyperfixating on it and working like a lot. Like any free time I have, I sit down and do something. So that's been my week. It's been fun. And
Awesome.
yeah, TikTok has been an interesting world recently for me.
Yeah. How about you, Josiah? How's your week been?
Well, learned that I'm almost certainly autistic. I've had also learned that I'm very good at masking that. I've had 3 mental breakdowns in the last week, unrelated to me learning that I'm probably autistic. They were other things. And I'm seeing a therapist after we talk about war. So
That's probably
Sounds
a good
great.
thing.
yeah.
I need to figure out when my next therapy appointment is.
I have seen Micha posting all of those asexuality videos. I did make a video the other day to argue with a guy that was trying to invalidate you as being part of the LGBT community.
Yeah.
And
Good luck,
then
buddy.
I was like, it's not worth it. And I just deleted the video.
Dude, it's never worth it. I've learned, don't even interact with the trolls. Just block them quick, because if you interact with them, they come back, and they usually come back with numbers. So I just block them. I don't even try most of the time.
Yeah, one of my friends.
There's a couple people I will try with, but
one of my friends, Garnet Confessions on TikTok, has been dealing with that guy that I've responded to a couple of times. You saw my last video when I was in the car.
yeah.
He's just like a massive idiot. Just either a troll or one of the Anyway, I don't like assigning people's value based on their intelligence, but his lack of intelligence tends to be pretty harmful, so I don't feel too bad about calling him stupid.
Hey, that's kind of related to possibly what we're going to talk about today.
All right. Yeah. Yeah.
So you guys, after I had to leave a little early last time. Well, not necessarily. It just went a little long.
Yeah.
Hey, we might be on track
Again.
I had to head out, and you guys continued the conversation and talked a little bit about how it'd be probably valuable to talk about maybe a part 2 that's more focused on like international war as a topic. But there was also some questions for me that you guys had, and I can't remember what they are on the top of my head. I might be able to recall them if you guys can't recall them, but
I had questions.
Yeah. I definitely think you should talk first, Christian, since we kind of continued and then you didn't get a chance to say anything back.
Yeah, you can go ahead and lead the topic, respond to whatever you heard.
I think one of the main questions I had was if, for example, if the Civil War had not happened, would slavery have been abolished in America? And my answer was, I don't think so.
Yeah, it's really hard to say because history goes one way, and once it goes that way, it's hard and impossible to say well, if we had approached this in a different way, could it have gone differently? We can speculate on that, but it's we really can't know. Right. And that's one of those really tough situations, because especially earlier in history, war is all we've ever known. War is the only way we've figured out how to resolve these massive political divides. And so that was the only solution we could apply. And when we did it, it wasn't super costly. There wasn't the possibility of mutual annihilation on the board. So there's definitely a huge difference between now, when we really need to start considering alternatives to war for solving drastic political divides, and back then. But I guess what it comes to is what I wrestle with is, it's strange to me how I'm struggling with how to approach this, but this might be a little bit uncomfortable of a topic to talk about, but I mean, we're here talking about war and stuff, so it's kind of par for the course.
Yeah.
But on an individual level, what qualifications might a person, what would qualify a person to forfeit their life? What qualifies a person to be basically on the chopping block, I guess you could say? Because when you're talking about war, the enemy is going to be made up of many different people with many different motivations for being there. And you would have to justify that they have forfeited their lives for every single one of those possibilities. So the possibilities we're kind of uncovering today is, what are those possibilities? Is it really, is a full out war really justified? Can we justify even killing a few people that we wouldn't justify killing as an individual to make political moves in a war or make political change, like freeing people from slavery, which is a big deal. I'm not trying to underplay that, because it is a big deal. It's an important thing that happened, and it's something that needed to happen. And what's under question is the means by which it happened, not that it happened itself.
Right.
So I think I have a few things I can put in there, but I've also talked a little bit now, and kind of given us some leading questions. So what are your guys' thoughts regarding, like, by the way, I just got a little notification that said, running out of time, we removed the 40-minute time limit on your group meeting.
Wow. So
A
good.
gift from Zoom. What? Love it.
Nice.
Okay, thanks. Wow, I didn't even know that was a thing.
That happened to me like at the beginning of the pandemic, and then never again. But hey, that's great.
I was about to say, if they just like
Quite
better.
privilege.
Oh my gosh. That's great.
There he is.
Zoom knows.
Oh my gosh. Face recognition. I had some thoughts. Yeah, because like I thought about it a lot in the preceding week after the episode. And then obviously like as I was editing. And like I did start to think, like, I feel like at least when I was thinking about it, like, which we're talking about war, but like in my head, I don't think was fully processing the idea of like when is like a full out war justified, if ever, as opposed to like, I don't know, like smaller, like, I don't want to say battles, but like, you know, things where people are trying to take something down and then some people are going to like fight them on that.
You know, something that's strange kind of regarding that, sorry to just do a little bit of sidestep, but it's weird to me how, like, if one person kills one person, like, that's a bad thing. That's a bad thing. If one person kills a lot of people, that's a horrible thing. But if a lot of people kill a lot of people, somehow we don't necessarily, it doesn't have that same impact of like, oh yeah, that's a horrible thing.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird? That's weird.
It is, yeah. That is weird. I guess because they have the backing of the community. Like, I guess like a lot of morals is based on like a community deciding that is wrong. And if an entire community says it's okay to do this, then, you know, I guess.
Yeah, or if an entire community is behind the idea of something, which then gets into like propaganda and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, so I was...
Quick
Sorry,
reminder,
sir,
despite me and Christian's argument last week, I am more so on his side than not.
Yeah,
With like not liking war and wanting us to not go to war and stuff like that.
Yeah. And
I just think some wars are justified.
Sure. Yeah, and I think I would probably say the same thing. But like what I guess the thought I was having, and like at what point like should like how does something progress to a war, and like and at what point is that progression sometimes warranted or justified, or like I don't even know if justified is the right word, but like so like I was thinking, like, if there is like obviously there, as we talked about, me and Josiah especially afterwards, like there's certain institutions that I think needs to be abolished and needs to go away. And the problem is that sometimes people will die for those institutions. So like, for example, the institution of slavery, which still kind of exists in the prison industrial complex. Like that is an institution that is horrible and like affects thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. And kind of our whole society is built on it. But for me to come against that institution, there are some people who will literally kill like me or other people who are trying to come against that. And like at some point, like when do you, like it sounds weird to defend yourself against the people who are trying to kill you for taking down the institution.
Mm-hmm.
And then that potentially progressing to, hopefully not, like I once again would really hope not, but some kind of a war where two sides are then going at each other. Because I agree, like I don't like the idea, and I think it is wrong that like you just paint this one side as like they are the enemy and they just need to die, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and almost forget the reason of like what of like the goal. It's like if it comes from the goal of like trying to take down an institution to the goal of destroying your enemy. And I think that is a tragic, I think that's a tragic thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's me just like rambling about my processing at the moment. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Because I mean, I've thought about those along those same lines. Like, how many of us know people or are people who are reasonable people, but we had either parents or role models in our lives who were not as reasonable, but we trusted them growing up because they were older than us. They were in a position above us. And it took us a long time to finally get to that point of maturity where we realized, oh, this person's not actually a reasonable person. They're not somebody I should be trusting. And so we divide from that. But how many of us might have been in a position where we were ready to stand for that other person or to die for that other person's morals and objectives because we trusted them that much?
Yeah.
Before we realized that we shouldn't trust them. And being in that position as a reasonable person who's unfortunately trusting of somebody just because of the structures and the way humans are, does that make you forfeit of your life? And I think one of the things I constantly hear is like, well, is this person endangering my life? Like, are they an immediate threat? Like, are they coming to take my life? And that's something that's really tough because like this is probably mostly just because of the Christian roots that I have. This whole idea of loving your enemy and laying down your life for your enemy. Like, I still don't know to what extent like that's like a super idealistic idea in my head. I don't know how much it's actually rooted in realism, and it's weird to me because like there's this Christian ideal which is loving your enemy and laying down your life for your enemy that is not necessarily super upheld within most conservative Christian circles that I've been in. Usually it's like love your enemy, yeah, but don't lay down your life for your enemy. If they're coming for your life, then you fight back. You have the right to take their life. That's generally the standpoint that I've heard from most people, as opposed to the Jesus standpoint of, well, I'm going to die for you, so that the veil will be lifted from your eyes and you'll see who God really is. That you'll see the ways you've been doing wrong and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's tough because like, yeah. I feel more conviction looking into the future again, but looking into the past when war was an option and it wasn't going to cost us everything, was it justified? And that's tough. It's hard.
Yeah.
The idealistic part of me wants to say, no, maybe if we came to them in peace, if enough people gathered and like, I don't know, marched on a plantation and basically like you have 100,000 people there saying, hey, your slaves are free to go. And you can try and do something about that, but you're going to be the one looking like the bad guy here mowing down people. Like you're going to basically reveal yourself to be a lunatic. And at that point, it's time to bring you down. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Would it be more effective? Like, or would it be just as effective to send armies of peace than it would be to send armies of war? And that's a risk that I don't feel like anyone's willing to take until maybe recently, because, nuclear weapons, mutual annihilation. But I don't know.
I mean, I think when it comes to that, that is something that people have been doing for a long time. The peaceful protest and the hands up protest after Michael Brown. And just the other day, news came out about DeMontario Gibson, who was literally just chased down in a white neighborhood and they shot at him because he was a FedEx delivery driver in their neighborhood. And he survived, and now he's speaking about it because he recognized what was going on, because typically people of color have to be constantly on guard for people who are trying to essentially commit modern day lynchings. And he recognized what was going on, so he tried to get out of there, and he got shot at several times. And currently the men are in prison, or it's not confirmed that they're in prison. They were taken to prison, but there was bail posted, so it's possible that they paid it. I don't know. They haven't released whether or not they did, but you know, that just happened like earlier this month, I believe, or last month. I don't know. That sort of stuff, it's not just one news story. It's like that's common enough that people thought it was okay to behave like this. Like that's a whole attitude that's existed for hundreds of years, that black people are just somehow less valuable. And obviously I know that your understanding would be that all people have the same amount of worth. So having that happen in the modern day after 60 years of peaceful protests, not always peaceful protests, but for the most part peaceful protests, and people coming together, especially with the last couple of years, and then just having political pundits and an entire political party just try to dehumanize an entire movement that is literally just saying some people are not treated like their lives matter, and we believe their lives do matter. It just doesn't give me a whole lot of hope that something like a peaceful solution would have worked 100 or 200 years ago for slavery.
I think that's a really good point. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, it's just kind of, when it comes to that, I think normally when it comes to war for me, one of the reasons that I kind of jumped on Revolutionary War last time, and you know, a reason that I continue to talk about it, is because to me that's one of the more justifiable wars. Normally that's punching up. When you're fighting somebody who is specifically oppressing like a group of people, when you're fighting oppressors, even we can talk about the soldiers. There were a lot of Confederate soldiers that didn't want to be Confederate soldiers. There were some families where the sons cut their trigger fingers off so that they wouldn't have to go to war, because they had brothers in the North, and they didn't believe in fighting their brothers. That's sad. Like it does suck. Like those are also humans. But I just can't see a justification for allowing something like that to continue, you know?
Yeah.
And obviously I know you wouldn't have wanted it to continue either. So
absolutely.
Without the benefit of knowing how it would have gone with peaceful solutions like that. I mean, I think there's one important thing to recognize, which is that the North was still very racist. Like, we can't really deify Abraham Lincoln too much because he was also a racist. He just was less racist than other people.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many of them would have been willing to just like throw their life down on the line, but there were plenty of them who were willing to not only fight against slavery, but also fight to keep the country together. That's kind of what unified people to pick up guns.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's also been abolitionists ever since the advent of slavery. So like, we know that people have always known that it was wrong. It's just that there were some people that said, but is it though? I kind of like it, you know?
It benefits me. It benefits these things, makes these things cheaper, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. You know, it's, and I think that part of one of the possibilities, and this is a very strong possibility because I'm learning more and more about how history was whitewashed for me, like in school, coming up, growing up. And so it might be that the success of peaceful protests, the success of peaceful movements has been exaggerated to me in the classrooms that I've been in, talking about like Mandela, or talking about Martin Luther King and the different peaceful movements and protests, and talking about like these were great successes and they made huge change. And it's definitely a possibility that that's just a agenda that's being pushed, an idea that's being pushed in order to pacify people from actually taking action and bringing about real change. So I recognize that possibility, and it's a strong possibility because, man, we've been lied to a lot about a lot of things.
Yeah.
So I really do wonder, like, are these ideas of a peaceful solution and the possibility of a peaceful solution some mixture of the whitewashed history that I've been exposed to and the Christian idealism pertaining to like the ideals and values of Jesus and loving your enemy? And it's really tough. It's hard because like even Christians have a hard time with loving your enemy when your enemy is trying to kill you. And
yeah,
I think I'll interject with one short thing, and then I'll probably stop talking about civil wars and revolutions and stuff like that. In terms
I think it's a valuable conversation, man.
Yeah.
It's mostly just responding specifically to what you just said, because it is a good point. One of the reasons that I pushed back so hard last week or 2 weeks ago is because the talking point of why did they have to get violent is a very common left-wing suppression point to harm people on the left or to harm civil liberties. It's often used for like, it draws people away from movements because it looked violent for a minute, and it doesn't get into the nuance of why somebody in that situation might have gotten violent. It doesn't get into the nuance of the violence. Well, it's not even nuance, but just the violence that's occurred for 400 years that people still have to deal with. And it's just a common... It's a thing that depowers the people who we need to empower. And I don't think that you were trying to do that. I think it was I think that your intentions are mostly focused on a philosophical concept that you find compelling. Mm-hmm. And there might have also been some of that whitewashed history mixed in there, which is why I tried to mostly ask questions, but I don't think I was very successful at that. I was very tired last week.
No. It's understandable.
But that was kind of the main reason that I pushed back on that, is because it's a kind of suppression talking point towards people who really need their voices heard. And I probably should have said that last week, because I didn't want to accuse you of anything, because I know you and I know that you weren't doing that. It was just, it sounded similar, and I wanted to make sure our podcast listeners kind of knew that we were not trying to promote that talking point necessarily.
Yeah. I mean, I've got a lot of like internalized, I think that like qualifies as like internalized racism, doesn't it? Or something like that. A lot of that to work through, and a lot of that I'm still trying to like understand. And I feel like TikTok as a community, like the BIPOC community, has really helped me to learn more about that, and I'm still learning more about that, obviously. It's a lot to unpack, and that's like one of those really what's the word I'm looking for, paradigm shaking possibilities that maybe peaceful solutions have just been propagandized as a means of suppressing change. Because I mean, peaceful resolution is something that's just so pretty. It's so nice. It's so ideal. And I just, it's what I would want in any situation. I'm not a violent person. I've never been in a fight my entire life, apart from maybe one time I got in a little scuffle with my brother. But I mean, brothers, man.
Wouldn't know anything
Justified
about that.
war. Let's talk about that. No.
No, my brother's amazing, by the way. He's an incredible person.
I've never thrown Micha on the couch and pinned him down.
Not that's nothing against my brother. He's an incredible person. Yeah, that was like when we were like, I don't know, 10, and he was like maybe 8.
Yeah. I mean, even I'm working through my own internalized racism, because like I am a person of color, but I also like I'm like mixed and Hispanic, and so like I still like the Black experience is something different than the Hispanic experience, and so like
and also different
know,
from our experience because we also have a different experience
Yeah.
than the Hispanic experience. That's what intersectionality is for. Yay, intersectionality
Exactly.
is
Yeah,
so
yeah.
good.
Yeah, and so it's nothing to feel bad about, like working through those internalized things, because for the most part it's not your fault. Like it's not my fault that I grew up taught certain
Mhm.
things in certain ways. Like I couldn't help that, and like so some of the biases I have, like they were handed to me, and
Mhm.
so like it's my job now to go through those things. But like I can't, you can't feel bad for what you didn't know. I guess in some sense that can drive you to change, which is good.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of what this whole podcast is about. It's about working through those things. And the way you
Yeah.
work through them is by uncovering, like, you acknowledge those possibilities, you consider other possibilities, and you process it and you talk
Yeah.
about it. And so that's what we're here for.
That's right. Yeah.
Anyway, I was
I
just
guess go
gonna
for it.
say, I kind of contributed a little bit to the Russia discussion, but I don't know as much as a lot of people probably know. So if you have anything to add, that'd be interesting to hear about.
Oh, are you talking to me?
Yeah. Sorry about that.
I don't know anything, so
Micah is in the dark
I
about it.
I honestly don't know a whole lot. I thought I heard something about there being negotiations of giving Russia whatever resources it's desperately in need of, if it's in desperate need of any kind of resources.
Mostly seaports, like access to the Mediterranean, which was recently taken away from them. And I don't want to say that it's entirely resource based because Putin is also Putin. But like there is a portion of that that's probably feels like the West is attacking them. And that, and for a Russian, that means it's time to go to war because they've been in a constant state of war for like the last 100 years. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So then at what point is it justified for countries to get involved in other countries' affairs? Like, because there have been a lot of times, especially where America, because we like to get our greedy hands in everything, like has stepped into other countries to solve problems that usually benefit us, but also are like not necessarily our problem to deal with. So like at what point is that all right for a superpower to just like step in and decide who's going to win a fight,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's tough. I think it might even stem back around to like the whole concept of like fighting oppressors. Like that might carry through to this. But it's really, really difficult because like we live in a whole new world right now. War is a
Yeah.
completely different thing that no one really has an idea of like what it would be to go to war internationally right now.
Yeah.
And it very well might be that the moment we find out is the moment that there's never any wars because there's no people left. It's one of the hardest calls to make.
Yeah.
There's very rarely, I think you pointed at this, but a lot of times in war, it's really hard to say who's the bad guy. Especially when you look at something like the Vietnam War, which was America coming in and deciding which political affiliation the country was going to have, and stuff like that. There are some times that I think you can say that there is a bad guy in a situation. I do stand by the idea that sometimes there is a bad guy in a situation. I would argue that like what happened in Afghanistan, as much as, we shouldn't have been there blowing money for 20 years over what was probably corporate interests, we also could have been... Part of the problem with America is that we don't have a country reconstruction department. That's left up to the military. And the military is useful for some things, like civil engineering. The military sometimes participates in like reforestation, planting trees and stuff like that. Like you get a lot of skill sets in the military. Like there's ag people, there's people that are good at engineering, and there's departments and sections for that. but it's not at the end of the day, it's still the military, and their focus isn't on rebuilding a country. It's on shooting people that are bad.
Yeah.
Arguably. And so we don't have some sort of department that would be able to handle that. And I think that might be a much more justifiable way of handling things, like maybe people that get military backing to keep them safe, but their job is solely focused on learning how that country wants to develop itself and focus on their needs and interests and not our needs and interests, which with a U.S. department is going to be kind of a big ask, but
kind of, yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, I don't know if that would really happen.
But like what happened with Afghanistan is basically if you take some of the most far-right people in America, specifically religious far-right people, that's basically who's in control of Afghanistan right now. Because I think we've talked about this before, but like the Islamic extremists and Christian extremists are not that far off from each other. Believe a lot of
some of them have admitted that publicly.
Yeah. Believe a lot of the same things, commit the same human atrocities, believe that similar people don't have human rights, like women and gay people. And it's not a good place to be in. Basically, the oppressors got to just wait it out and be in power after we left.
Which really sucks. And then, we basically tell all the people who rightfully so want to leave that country, like, nope, you can't come here.
Yeah, exactly. And we had a huge part in like the destruction of their country because the Middle East has been so war-torn for so long.
Yeah.
Those people out there just want to live. But one of the things about modern warfare that really sucks is the drone warfare. Like there are people in the Middle East who have said that they hate clear skies because that means that drones can be in operation. And when drones are in operation, there's a possibility that innocents die. And it could be them.
Yeah. It's messed up.
Yeah. It's what we would call, colloquially, bad.
Yeah. I think for me, one of the difficulties of international war is like just how easy it is to like have certain things that you could say are justified, like keeping certain oppressors out of power and like countries stepping in to like make sure that like that doesn't happen. But then also because you have the might and the power and the interest to do a lot of things that are not justified. And like you were saying, like in rebuilding in a way that actually benefits the country and not just your country.
Right, instead of even perpetuating American interests.
Yeah, or even like getting involved in other things that like maybe we don't even know about that are like absolutely not justified, but just like maybe isn't covered in the media, or like there's a lot of things within history that are like, that was really messed up that America did that. But they don't talk about it because they probably don't really want you to know because it was just objectively wrong. And so like it kind of almost gives license to justify a lot of things that are not justified and to step in at times when it's really just benefiting your own interests and not the actual people.
Yeah. I think something Christian was itching at too was the possibility of nuclear warfare, which in the modern day is always a possibility. And even though we might have like nuclear weapon fatigue after the Red Scare in the 80s, where it wasn't just the communism, it was also the possibility that somebody might drop a nuke on somebody else. The Red Scare specifically was about like communism, but like part of the whole Cold War fears was the whole idea of nuclear warfare. And that's why so much post-apocalyptic stuff kind of came from people who were raised in that generation. Because that was part of like what they grew up with. Like they had to imagine, what will the world look like after the nuclear weapons have dropped? Like what will the survivors of humanity, if there are any, be able to do at that point in a desolate landscape?
Yeah. And who knows Well, I don't want to say like no, that probably has never happened before. Like I was just thinking like back in my Bible days, like there was like a theory that Noah's Ark or whatever, like what happened is like humanity got like so advanced and then eventually like just wiped everyone out except a few people and then kind of started back from scratch again. But I don't know if there's like actual evidence for that.
That sounds
There
like
probably isn't.
I don't want to say conspiracy theory because it's not really a conspiracy theory, but like
Yeah.
in that realm of there's a lot of beliefs about what the world. This is its own podcast episode. You should watch the Wendy Goon conspiracy theory iceberg because then you'll understand why I'm making this connection. And also, Wendy Goon is funny. I like him. But in that realm of like mystic beliefs about the old world and like beliefs that humanity has at one point achieved a higher level of technology than we have today. Mm-hmm. That's kind of where that falls in for me. Because you and I know after studying the Jewish culture that was more than almost certainly just a story that was told to say a certain thing about God, but not told as like a historical, this is exactly what happened. And that's one of the problems that I have with those is that they kind of ignore the Jewish culture and they just take it straight to how we understand it in America today, which is a problem. But that's not what we're talking about. One of the scary things about nuclear weapons, though, is that it does not just affect the countries that are fighting. I would almost feel okay. Like, obviously I wouldn't because I would be, having my skin burned off by radiation and stuff like that. And I actually do want to live, despite the mental breakdowns this week. I like that. It's fun. Sometimes. And
Sometimes.
I would prefer for us to not die. But I could almost see, like, if just two countries destroyed each other, then I would have hope at least humanity goes on. But if enough nuclear bombs are dropped, I forgot how many it is, there's a number that the entire world is covered in a nuclear winter. And that destroys all life on Earth that can't withstand that, which includes humans. So two countries fighting could result in the extinction of humanity. That is a much bigger problem than just two countries fighting and they fight each other to the death.
Yeah. Ugh, gross.
Yeah.
Makes me feel icky inside.
And it's horrible because, like, you just get the feeling that politicians don't really care that much. Like, it would affect your country, but, like, do you care that much? I don't know if you do.
No, it doesn't seem like it. I mean, we're already destroying the planet at a very rapid rate.
We are. At the rate that we're going, it won't result in a human extinction, and that's explicitly because of green efforts. That's not because corporations are doing what they should be doing. It is exclusively because we're developing new renewable resources and improving the ones that we already utilize that we will not cause the extinction of humanity with our destruction of the planet. But the sea levels will rise and people will probably die specifically because corporations wanted to save some money on their production, which is also a problem and a type of war and why I'm a revolutionary commie.
And it always circles back.
It always circles back to the communist propaganda, don't you see?
Ugh, man, I was legit, like, the other night sitting in the shower, like, real depressed about the world.
Yeah.
So now, like, the environment is being destroyed, and the corporate elites are just playing with people's lives, and I'm just a pawn in the scheme, and I can't really do much about it, unless a whole bunch of us get together and actually do something about it, aka a revolutionary war, or some kind of boycott or strike that ends up bringing the corporations to their knees. And
this is why communists
is...
really want more class consciousness, because as much as a lot of communists believe in some sort of a revolution, most of us would prefer if we all just stopped being evil people towards each other.
Yeah.
And so
well,
the more class consciousness there is, the harder it is for other people to control us. Yeah. Also,
fair.
like, one of the things that I was going to argue with that guy who was like, oh, ace people don't have it as hard as us gay people do. Us gay people have, like, yeah, obviously, shut up. There's still two oppressed groups.
Why does it matter?
That, like, what, like, oppression, fighting between oppressed groups just empowers the oppressor.
Yeah.
And that is why racism is still pushed by the right, because a lot of lower class white people don't realize that they have more in common with a lower class black person than they do with the people telling them that they don't.
Yeah, it's the oppressor making you fight about things that shouldn't be problems. But they keep you fighting about these. I don't want to call them little issues because they're not little issues. But issues that just let the oppressor continue doing whatever they do, and then you're fighting with people that you should be banding together with, because the real problem is the oppressor.
Right, yeah. Yeah, and by they're not little issues, you mean like racism as a whole isn't a little issue.
Yeah.
Not that like
No.
Not the specific talking points that are pushed on like Fox News or something like that, because those would be like what I would consider little issues. But
right, well,
I see what you're trying to do. You're trying to not invalidate the larger thing while still invalidating the smaller thing. It's
yeah, or even just talking about like minimum wage and things like that. Like, yes, that is a big issue, but like there's a bigger issue that is like people like Jeff Bezos and freaking Elon Musk just becoming it's like 60% richer over the last 2 years, while the rest of our country just like falls into like state of crisis.
Right.
And they don't
the price of houses
care.
has risen by like 400% or something like that, and minimum wages haven't increased.
Yeah.
Like they're allowed to do that.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Sorry,
anyway,
we don't both have enough to say about international war. Apparently.
Apparently not. Completely.
I mean, do you want to? Okay, is there a war that
too.
you can think of that was stupid? Do you want to maybe talk about World War I, which was started because of a really small political conflict in a really small country that, because of a cascade of alliances, turned into a world war? I don't know that much about World War
it's
I.
Early,
I just know that it started with the assassination of an archduke, and then somehow that got the entire world to fight.
Wow.
And the country that got the biggest blame was Germany, and we slapped a bunch of sanctions on them, which arguably caused World War II. And they weren't even involved originally. They just had to side with a country that was getting attacked because of a alliance that they had with them.
Mm.
But they were the biggest power in that situation. They were the strongest. And so we were like, okay, Germany, you get punished for this. And then Germany suffered economically for like 40, 30 years.
Yeah.
20 years, something. I don't remember the timelines. Man, it was so long ago.
I think you were right when you said we just don't have much to say about international war.
We have way more to say about how much we hate rich people and stuff like that.
Oh, geez.
I was trying to throw something for a Christian, just throw in an opinion about like an anti-war, like something that should not have happened kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. There's a lot that could be said, and I don't know if I have the words to say them.
I think that part of the problem is that we live in so much conflict in America right now that it's hard to see outside our bubble. And I have been paying attention. I forgot their names. There have been some BIPOC creators that I've seen talking about the Russia conflict, and I was going to shout them out, and I can't remember their names.
Darn.
But there are people who do talk about that sort of stuff on TikTok, and there's some stuff that I've learned that is interesting, and it is important because it is true that the US and Russia are both world superpowers with nuclear armaments, and that is scary.
Yeah.
Like, it's like the nope, I can't reference that. I wrote it. I was gonna reference something that I wrote like a couple months ago. I forgot that I wrote it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, we could just wrap up because
Yeah,
I don't know.
we
if
could
have
wrap
much
it
to
up.
say. Yeah. Anyway, so who knows what we will talk about next? I don't think we have a set topic, but I think this was good. I think this was one of the few times where like we're not all like super on the same page, and so that kind of allowed us to explore more possibilities in different ways. And I think that's good. And
Yeah,
so
for sure.
hopefully this kind of models what those conversations can look like in a way that's not like, I don't know, these kind of topics can have a lot of tension to them. But they don't have to. You can just, like we do, just explore possibilities and not get super fed up about it, and actually like listen to each other and be like, you've got a really good point there. And so that's what I'd like to see more of in the world. But
yeah, I think that Christian did say something important last week that maybe got lost in the fray. Is that not last week? I keep saying last week, 2 weeks ago, which is that his opinions, he said, were mostly for him, and he wouldn't tell somebody else to follow his thinking necessarily. Especially, I don't think that he would ever say that to somebody who is oppressed or pushed to the margins.
Yeah.
And I think that that's also important in these discussions, is like, if you have personal morals that you think hold you back from being able to do something, then it doesn't mean that other people necessarily, because we all have different life experiences. Some of us have lived in, not me, but like some people have lived in fear of dying at the hands of an oppressor their entire life, and their perspective on what kind of violence is justifiable is going to be completely different to somebody who did not grow up like that. So it is important for us to have that attitude. Specifically, Christian's attitude was very good towards the discussion, in terms of his morals and his beliefs and acceptance of different perspectives and stuff like that. And I think that that's why we do this show. It's important. But I just wanted to throw that in there and give a shout out to him for making that point.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, if you want to find us and connect with us and continue the conversation, then you can find me at Pondering Together on TikTok. Yeah, I know that you can find Christian at Truth Voyager, though
He is private
his
still, I believe.
He is still private, so you can request to follow him, and he says that he usually accepts. So
you can find me at Something Matters on TikTok. I post sometimes. Recently, I've just been arguing with people, so that's kind of the bender I've been on. But yeah.
Hey, that is often how TikTok goes. And you can also find our YouTube version of these episodes if you want to leave a comment, a question, or connect with us in that way. There is also a link to, I believe it's Patreon. I'm not sure, but a link to support us financially if you would like, because this does take a lot of time, and we are not begging for money because we kind of just do this for fun.
But I woke up at 5:30 on a Saturday.
That too. That too. But then you can find that in the link in the bio or the description of the episode. So thank you all for joining us, and hope you all have a wonderful day. All right, you can just not say anything. That's fine. All right.
I do have one thing to say about your guys' schools. If your classes were 45 or 50 people and you still knew everybody, you were trying too hard. See, I sat beside the same person for an entire year, and I still couldn't remember their name by the end of that year.